So hi, this is Michaelle Scanlon at Garden Spots, and we have an online class today with Carrie Engel. She is going to be your instructor to tell you everything you need to know about growing your own microgreens. Carrie is the greenhouse manager at Valley View Farms in Hunt Valley. She has been working in the industry since 1972. So Carrie really knows her stuff. She's also well known in the area because she appears each week with Tony Pan and Ava Marie on WBAL's Sunday Gardener. And in 2020 received the Professional Achievement Award from the Maryland Nursery Landscape and Greenhouse Growers Association. We are so excited to have her as your online instructor tonight for the Garden Spots Grow Kits. So tonight we're going to talk about microgreens, and Carrie, I'm going to let you handle that.
All right, cool. Thank you. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. I will say I'm used to the spots we do on TV run about 2.5 minutes, maybe 4 minutes. So this is different for me. If I get too long-winded, it's just how I am. And I talk too fast, but hey, we'll have fun doing it all. But a couple benefits, I guess, about microgreens is one, they're very healthy for us. They can contain up to 40 times the density of nutrient that the finished plant will sometimes have. So that's incredible. And you're getting vitamins A and C and B6 and K, plus you're getting iron and phosphorus and well, I guess potassium too. Anything you really need. And it's pretty amazing that all that can come from these little greens like this. So it's kind of cool. We'll go over all of that. The other thing is with COVID, I think a lot of us need to do things. We need some control over our food sources. Again, this is a good starter. If you're making smoothies, throw a handful of this in your smoothie. You can add it to your soup, add it to your salads. Chicken salad, I love chicken salad. So, you know, this is somewhere I could sneak vegetables in, whatever it might be. So it really is a nice way to kind of do all that. With the kit that you guys got, you should have the following. You should have 3 of these containers, 3 packets of seed, soil, or potting media, depends what some of the professionals have to call it potting media. I'm not that way. Soil's fine by me. And a spray bottle. This is going to double tonight. I have a large Malamute at my feet. Right now he's very quiet, but when he's not quiet, this works. All I have to do is show it to him and he slows it down a little bit. So that's nice. So just make sure you do have all these. Before you go to plant them, make sure they're all clean. Soap and water. I would not use disinfectant because bleach is in a lot of that, and bleach is not good for seed. It's not a good mix, but regular soap and water is fine. Rinse everything out well. In most cases, just let it drip dry and, you know, and you're ready to go. And you'll be reusing a lot of these. So after your harvest, we'll go over all that again, how to sterilize the soil and how to reuse all of these containers a lot of different times. So you can really keep going for a good bit. So growing microgreens are really pretty easy. In your kit, you got some soil. This is a seed starting mix, so it's very fine. It's primarily peat moss. It has some vermiculite maybe in it. You might have some perlite in some of it. Sometimes you'll have charcoal just as a keep the water or like fresh. But this is really easy to use. It is peat moss. Peat works sort of like a sponge. So as you add water, it's going to take it in really nicely. With most of your potting mixes, this is just good general information. You can use this 2 or 3 times, but after that, it really does degrade. Now, you guys are going to be using this and putting plants in there that are creating new air spaces, which is what usually goes wrong with reused soils. So you can use this up to 3 times. And again, we'll go over the sterilization and everything for that. But I put some water in there, and I unfortunately probably got a little heavy, but we're still in good shape. But what you want is, instead of that real fine mix like that, you want it to be a little clumpy. You want it to be able to hold a little bit like that and not get all crazy and wispy, and when the wind blows, it goes away. So I'm just going to take that and add it right into one of these containers. I've pre-washed everything, of course. All right, I've got most of it out of there, and that'll become important later. And then you can just take it with your hand. I'm not shy. But if you don't want to get your hands dirty, you can take just a flat object or something and press everything down so it's nice and even all the way across. You don't want to press it too much because you still want those air spaces in here and keep things going. So I think we had, what, 5 different types of seed. You had arugula, broccoli, radishes, which are somewhere in this room, but I don't know where, beets, and also broccoli. So all of these sprouts can be used. You can also use larger seed, things like peas and sunflower. With the larger seeds, you're usually going to want to soak those overnight because they have a harder shell. So they're not going to just take off right off the bat. So consider that when you do that. You want this to come up relatively high in the pot. So this is maybe a 1/2 inch down or so. And I'm going to do broccoli. I love these little packets because they are reusable. And I'm just going to take my teaspoon. So I'm just going to take this and spread it nicely. Density of about 10 seeds or something per inch, per square inch, and have a nice cover like that. And here again, you just want to press them in. I've read that some people will put soil covering over them, but as small as these seeds are, that really just isn't necessary. So you're pretty good to go there. So had I taken the time to clean out all the soil of that bag I can then use that as a greenhouse. So hey, Missie, I'm going to take your old kale bag that we had. Okay, I'm going to put it in there. I'm going to cheat and just set it inside. And for usually the first 2 to 4 days, you don't need sun, you don't need light, but you do need humidity. You need to keep it moist. So this creates almost like a little greenhouse effect for you. So it's handy, it's easy to use, and it's cheap, which is kind of nice too. I mean, it's definitely reusable. So just take a look at it. You should see some condensation on here most days. If you don't, take your magic watering tool here. This is how you measure it when you need to water, and just put that in. And if the soil is dry, go ahead and re-wet it. Now you can re-wet it a couple times. And I should have mentioned this when we did plant the seed to begin with, just to get that seed to settle. You can take your mister bottle and give it all a shot just to make sure it settles in. But when we water, what's nice about all these containers is they have good drainage. So there's ridges in here so you don't get water. Again, air is as important to the seed and to your plants as water is. So you want to keep those air spaces. But they have the holes in the bottom here. And you can take a little saucer and just set these in the saucer. I took some cereal bowls, you can fill that up with water, keep it in there for about 15 minutes, let it drain and set it out. Now I do a lot of seed starting at my home, so I do have some seed starting trays like this. So I can also just take them and put them in that, leave them for, again, 10, 15 minutes and then take them out. Don't forget about it, because what can happen, I keep saying air and how important air is. Well, so is air circulation. And if you don't have that, and if your plants are too wet, not just humid, but just too wet, then you can have some fungal issues. So anybody who's grown anything that says they've never killed anything, they're lying. They're just, I've learned more through failures than I have through successes. So
Hey,
these
Carrie.
are some little hypoestes that I was growing in my little room back there. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's some fungus here where I didn't empty the tray. I went and watered it. I forgot about it. I went back 3 days later and that was starting.
Hey, Carrie, we have a
Yes.
question.
Yeah.
The question is, how often do we water when the planter is in the bag?
Well, I doubt they'll need it most of the time, to be honest with you. I'll doubt you'll even have to do it. But just again, if you don't see condensation forming on the bag, you don't see any water droplets or anything, I'd go ahead and open it up and take your finger and just check the soil. And if it's dry, go ahead and water it then. But in general, you're only going to have it in there until the seeds sprout. So we'll go over that in just a minute. But you do want to be careful here of the mold. So again, this is a plant that I lost. I saved it special just for this. I normally would have gotten rid of it right off the bat. All right, so yeah, let's start. Let's backtrack. So we're going to pretend I let this drain, which I will later, and we're going to put it in here as our little greenhouse. And it's just going to stay in here like probably 2 to 4 days. It's not going to take very long. And as soon as you see it start to sprout, and not just the first couple to come out, but when you see that most of the tray has started to sprout, then pull that out. And at that point, you can go and put it in some light. That's when the photosynthesis and the leaves start growing, and you really start to notice things. So if you have a nice bright windowsill facing south, perfect. You want at least 6 to 8 hours a day, and you can honestly go a little bit more to keep things going and to keep the plants from stretching. When plants don't get enough light, they get tall, and as they stretch for light. So you usually want to keep a light 10 inches or so from the plant, or again, if you have a nice bright window. I went to I hate to say this, I work at a garden center and we sell some really high dollar, high class plant lights. I found these at Walmart. They were cheap. I mean, they're relatively inexpensive, and it has a grow light in it. So you're getting the full spectrum like you would from the sun of ultraviolet light, and the blues and the violets and everything that you need. And you can put that on a timer for as long as you need to. I mentioned I have the light shelf in the other room here where I have trays like this. When I'm starting seeds, it's usually 12 to 14 hours a day. And with those, I'll keep, like here, you want to be 6 to 10 inches away from the plant. And when you're starting other seeds, you might want to even get a little bit closer. Now, the nice thing about fluorescent tubes, LED lights, is they don't have heat. If you're taking a grow bulb that's an incandescent, you want to be careful about putting that too close to the plant because it's too hot. So at this point, when your plants are out of their little greenhouse here and you've moved them to another area, that air becomes more important. Here we want to be at like 75 degrees. Once we get them to this point, we can go 65, 70 or so. Questions so far? So like I said, I'm going to wait probably 2 to 4 days, and I'll be able to take this out and set it under a light. Missy brought this to me at what, 4 days old, maybe?
I think it was about 4 days.
4 days old, okay. And I've had it for another 4 days, 3-4 days. This really is probably ready to be harvested. The first 2 leaves that come up on most of the plants we grow are called the seed leaves or cotyledons. Most of the plants that we grow are what we call dicots, so they have that leafy texture. Monocots are more like the grasses grow. Anybody grow catgrass for their pets? That's a monocot, so it just has a single thing. But when you definitely want to harvest this is when it does start to set out what we call a true leaf. So at this point, tomatoes and lettuce and beans all kind of look the same. They just have set up that little seed leaf. They don't look that different. But the next leaf that comes out is definitely one of those other plants, and you can start to see it. And that's when you should probably cut it. When you are ready to harvest, ideally, if I'm too far away here, I apologize. But get whatever receptacle you're going to get to put them in, and hold with one hand and cut with the other. And I would harvest all of them at once, because if you leave some of them there and some of them not, they're gonna, again, there's a lot of water available there and you don't want them to get too much. So just go through and cut them down as low as you can, because everything here is good. The stems, the leaves, everything's ready to go. So we're gonna cut all this. Just wash it as you use it. I would just put it in the refrigerator like this. You can put it back in a plastic bag, put it in the fridge, and just take it out as you need it. Wash it then.
We have one quick question, or
Okay.
well, 2 questions, but they're both regarding temperature for seed starting. What would be the ideal temperature in the room?
Most things, it's going to be 70, 75 degrees.
As far as you know, can you use romaine, red leaf lettuce, spinach?
Yep, and a lot of places, even if you go to some of the seed companies, Johnny's, you guys mentioned, is very good. And you can buy seeds that have been organically grown or not. You can buy seeds that are pelleted, so they're easier for you to seed, especially if your little tiny hands that are helping you out with any of these things. And some actually grow like a baby lettuce mix. We sell mesclun mix as part of our regular spring program. That would be great to do as a microgreen, and you just cut that as you needed it. And same thing goes for, God help me, cilantro. But cilantro, basil, some of those herbs, if you can time things that are all going to be ready at about the same time and are going to germinate at about the same time, you can certainly use those as mixes. And some of the seed companies have already done that for you. So if you're Italian and you only want Italian microgreens, somebody out there has them. If you want to do something for a Mexican cuisine, but you hate cilantro, you can probably find something out there like that, or sort of mix your own. But the baby greens are great. Broccoli is great. Almost anything in that brassica family is going to work out fine. Most of the lettuces are going to work out fine. I mentioned before, peas are great for microgreens. Sunflower seed. are nice to use for microgreens. Those larger, harder seeds, those should be soaked overnight before you do use them. You mentioned Swiss chard. That really is one of my favorite. There's a variety called Bright Lights, and there are some other ones. The Bright Light Swiss chard has stems and ribs in the stem that can be yellow and red and pink and almost purpley, and they're just pretty. So even at this stage, you start to see some of those colors. And if you let some of this stuff grow on, you can do that too. And that would be another thing that I'd mention if you want to do some radishes and go ahead and do the microgreens, take a few and put them in a window box and let them get 21 days until you can, well, the daikon's going to be longer, but like the little cherry bell radishes and some of those really only take about 3 to 4 weeks before you can pull them out and actually use them as intended, I guess I want to say. I don't know what you couldn't have as far as microgreens are concerned, because once they get their true leaf, that's when they get they develop more of a stronger taste, I want to say, or they get the furry stuff on the leaves or whatever it is you don't like. Spinach, I could eat spinach like this. I would have no problem with it. And the other thing I would have no problem with this is, like I said, adding it to smoothies. Anytime you can hide vegetables for me, they're going to be better off. So broccoli and cheese, I can handle that, whatever. And you can see that my diet has not always been vegetable centric, but I'm getting better. So that works out well that way.
All right, we've got another question about sterilizing the soil. So when you sterilize it, do you keep the stems and the roots in the soil when you put it back in the bag and sterilize?
I would. I'd go ahead and do that. Again, you're gonna add some water to this first. So let's do that. Let's see. I have water. I'm gonna go about a cup. I'm Rachel Ray. I don't really measure. So I'm gonna use about a cup of water. So I don't know if you can see this or not, but can you see the white roots here? Yeah. I'm gonna spill all the water out. But there's white roots here. You can certainly take that and just mix it up with everything else. But you're ready to go. I mean, take that, break it down so everything is in kind of equal pieces. Again, just cover that, put it in the soil or put it in the microwave for less than 90 minutes, for about 90 seconds at first. You're probably going to need about 3 minutes on it. I mean, you'll have to check it. But then do take your thermometer. I always said soil thermometer, but take your meat thermometer and just check it. And once it's up to 180 degrees, you're good. Now, you don't want to go right from that 180 degrees to planting. You do want it to cool off back again to room temperature so you don't cook any of the seeds when you plant it.
I think it's important to know that the bag should be open also when you put it in the microwave.
Yeah, you've got to want to make sure that breathes. See, I just closed that just out of habit. But you want to do that just like you do with Uncle Ben's rice. You have to at least tear out the corner so that it gets whatever.
It needs to vent.
On Thanksgiving, I burned myself on corn. I threw in a microwave thing of corn and I went and opened it up. Yeah, I'm missing skin on one thumb. I just have to be careful. But really, like I said, this is pretty easy. It's fast. I think it's very gratifying because it is so fast. And if you're like me and really have to figure out a way to get some of those greens in your system and some of that nutrition in, this is a good way to do it. It's easier than popping a pill that we don't want to do to get our extra vitamin A's and all that in. We know we can get it in this. If you do a little bit of research, you can find out which vegetables are rich in what. But the broccoli is amazing, just how much that it really has. We talked about beet greens have been, the people in the South understand how important greens are and have always done more mustard greens and collards and kale than we have. And I think we're just catching up to getting some of that nutrition back into our diets and making that work for us.
So we had one, I think this is about our last question, and it's regarding how to store the unused seeds. So each of the packets has a tablespoon of seeds, or three teaspoons. So that should be 3 crops.
2 more than that.
Yep. So you should have extra once you've planted your first crop. And how should everybody store the remaining seeds?
I would put them right back in the packet that you have them in. Keep them in a cooler spot. It doesn't necessarily have to be. Some people will put them in the refrigerator, but you don't necessarily have to do that.
They should last for about 12 months or about a year.
At least. I mean, I know at our farm we grow 77 varieties of tomatoes. And this year we weren't able to get all of them. And that was kind of the same last year. So we have some leftovers. We don't get 100% germination. We might get 60% germination, but we're still able to do it. So we put them all in flats with real tiny cells, And then we transplant those up into bigger cells or bigger pots before we sow them. And it just takes us a little bit more time sometimes, but you can use all that seed and, really use it for
All
years.
right, well, thanks, Carrie. We really appreciate it. You gave
Thank you,
everybody
guys.
a lot of good information, and I think we're out of questions. So I want to say thanks very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm going to go let my dog out. He's like going crazy over there.
Okay.